thank you all for coming here. So this is the commencement of the Q&A section for Girl Boy. First of all, Girl Boy is a personal film, as you've explained during the promotional period. Does finally making it like take a lot of your chest? And how do you feel? Do you think about like people from your past that you might have interacted with? And do you wonder what they feel about the film as well?
To be honest, I don't think that I've thought about like anybody specifically from my past and how they would interact with the film.
Yeah.
But I would say like during the making of the film, I thought about just like different experiences from my past, especially secondary school and primary school, about like just certain interactions that I didn't know how to like navigate or stand up for myself because I was just so young and didn't have like the words, the language. But my hope for the film is for people to just watch it and have a different perspective of just what it means to be like masculine presenting, not being called a girl boy or like a tomboy in our society. Girl Boy started out as a photography project. I was commissioned to make stock images for Adobe, right, about marginalized communities, and I decided to focus on this one because that's what I can relate to the most. I had like the concept for the project, and when it was time to like scout for the models, I decided to do like a poster, an open call, and I found this page on Instagram. They curate like tomboy fashion, and then I sent it to them. They posted it on their story, and I created a Google form. So I just had people fill in their information, but I don't remember putting anything about age, which is interesting. So I didn't have an idea of their age. I just knew location, availability, like for dates, and some other things I can't remember, but I don't remember including age. When I got the feedback from the form, I prioritized people that were based in Abuja, and like I think one person was in Kefi at the time, but I just prioritized people that were around me because at that time I couldn't commit to like getting people outside of Abuja. So yeah, that was the selection process. I just reached out to the people, and then we had like our first meeting, and that's when I saw everybody, and I was like, oh, okay, like, yeah. Up to now, I still don't know their age, by the way. I have no idea. One person at the time had just finished NYC. One person was talking about relocating. So they're just like at different points in their life that I can guess their age, but I'm not sure. But yeah, it was a coincidence to have like the Ella who is like older, and then people like the rest of them across like, yeah. When I was making the film, I always knew that I wanted to use like different aspect ratios to separate the animation, to separate the B-roll, and to separate the interviews. And I chose to edit the interviews in black and white because I didn't want to have any like distraction. Sometimes when I edit, I think of color as distraction, but also as beauty. But for this documentary, it was distraction for me, especially in the first like 25 minutes, but later in the end, it comes into color. But that's when the story also changes and it becomes more positive, right? But yeah, early on, I knew I wanted to use different aspect ratios. It came to me in post-production, in editing. But the thing is, I had seen it somewhere in another documentary I had watched. Because I watch a lot of documentaries. But for the purpose of this film, I was watching a lot of documentaries at the time. So I had picked up on a lot of like editing techniques and like just very stylistic like things that editors use in documentaries to just like highlight the story or just push a bit more, right? So that was one thing that was I knew I had seen it around that time. So when I started editing and I decided the film was going to be in black and white, and I got towards the end and she started talking about, I was like, oh, this would be cool to try the color thing, and like I just did it, and yeah. The reason I decided to make the film was my curiosity, just trying to know if there were other people that had similar experiences as myself. That was what I was thinking about at the time. So when I started making the film and it started to come together and editing, I started to realize this can be so much more than I'm thinking. My initial plan was to just make the film and put it on YouTube or put it on Instagram and just like move on to something else. But in the editing process, I started to see that, if I put in more effort into this, it can become so much more and reach like an even bigger audience. And I still don't think the film is perfect, but I think it's good enough to make the points that I wanted to make. And in editing, I had to decide when to stop because again, it started from 4 hours to 1 hour, 30 minutes. I think I had a 25-minute version, but I had to decide when to stop and just move forward with the project as long as it still had the essence of what I wanted it to have. So when I had the idea to make the film, like it was a very small, like passion project, and I think I just wanted to make something or start something I could do by myself and not like rely too much on people to make. So I did the initial like interviews myself. I filmed them at home, and again that was a way for me to just control like the location and the environment and not have to be conscious about like time or where we are, like if we're in a studio, for example. So yeah, at the very beginning, pre-production and production, it was just me, and then I did the first draft of edits for the film. And I think it was at that point I realized that I needed more to make the film, like B-roll, for example. So B-roll is supplementary footage. So if we're talking about Abuja, for example, and you see a video or picture of Abuja, that's a B-roll. So I started to realize when I was editing that I needed more to make the film more like complete. And I started looking for people outside of Abuja. So one of the girls is in Anambra. I didn't have the budget to start traveling to Anambra, so I had to find a drone pilot in Anambra that could film those specific shots and then send them to me. I had to find someone in Lagos. And Lagos was very interesting because if you know Lagos, you know you can't just bring out a camera. So all the shots you've seen of Lagos were filmed on an iPhone 7, I think. I had to find people in these different cities to help me get the footage that I wanted. And even the ones of Abuja I got from Dave of Alien Pros. I did the initial like edits with the bureau and then decided I wanted animation in the film. Had to find an animator, which was a very long process because all the guys I found in Lagos were charging me thousands of dollars that I didn't have. So at that point, I was like, do I really need to put animation in this film? Maybe I can just make it without like all of those extra things. But um, luckily, I was able to get some funding, and I found this guy from Ghana, and we made the film. We made it work. It took like 10 months to make the animation, and then it was time for sound design. And I spoke to my friend Sute, who at the time was saying that he was interested in doing sound design for film. And yeah, so that's the whole team it took to make the film. Yeah, to be honest, I think at some point they were just like curious to know what I was about because they had not like heard of any projects like this before. So when I approached them, it was like, I'm not sure what this is, what I'm interested in knowing what you're trying to make. And I try to be as open and honest as possible. And I think what helped with like getting them to come on board was the fact that I could share in some of the experiences that they've lived. And again, another thing I realized in the process of making this film is people want to talk. People have a lot to say, and people are just looking for community. And for them, it was timely for them because they just like had so much to say and they were willing to share with me. But when I started editing, I think it started to get real. And some of them, when I started asking for bureau footage of their families, they weren't sure anymore. But no, it was not, I didn't have to convince them. I just was as honest as I could have been, and they were all willing to share their stories. From making this film, what I can say is that um, I'll say the best film you can make is one where like the story is like true to you, or you believe in like the story of what you're trying to tell. Yeah, because for me, I feel like the best stories I can tell are the ones I've lived. But that's me. I don't know if the same applies to the next director or the next filmmaker. But for me, that's what I stand by. The initial idea I had for the film, I was going to be a part of it and I was going to do the opening sequence to introduce the film. But because I was also like filming it and editing it, I decided not to be too in the project so I can just step back and do the editing and not, you know, overthink like my appearance in the film or influence the other like subjects in the film. So I just wanted to take a step back and then just listen to their story and edit it from that point of view as a filmmaker and not as a subject in the film. The animation style, it was a mix of different things. It was not just one particular like reference that I had or mood board that I had, but I studied art history and film. And one of the art periods that we discussed in school is called German Expressionism. I don't want to get too technical, but this is useful information to answer your question. German Expressionism was a time where like artists were not drawing like reality, so they were distorting a lot of lines in their work, right, as a way to reflect the society in their work. And for me, I thought that was the best way to show like backgrounds, because I don't think Nigeria is a, I don't know, is a functional society. And for me, one way to represent that was to use like not a lot of straight lines and a lot of shading and like blacks in the background. That was very intentional because again, animation is very expensive. So I wanted to focus on the main character because if I had to add like background characters, moving cars, and all these things, it was going to be too much. So I tried to keep it minimal, but still make the background interesting enough where we don't really notice that there are no background characters, if that makes sense. When I did the initial first drafts and I realized the film would like be better with animation, I couldn't afford to do it at the time, so I just left it. But I think what was good was that I had the first drafts, right? So when I started to see like opportunities for grants and stuff, I was able to use that to apply. But at that point I was already disconnected from the film a little bit because I had not worked. I had stopped at working on it for some time. Um, I'll say for the entire like period, like 6 months when I was trying to find funding, I wasn't really, because I already had the first draft, I didn't have any reason to like work on the project file. So I just left it. And yeah, even when I did like find an animator, I was still very slow because we had to do like animatics. So we had to do the sketching, animatics. It was a very long process. So I was already like exhausted, like, and but I think when I saw the first like finished sequence of the animation, like I was like, okay, like we actually have to. And I had a timeline, to be honest, from the NGO I got the grants from, because they had donors, they had their own timeline. So they told me you have to be done with this animation like in 6 months. We ended up being like 9, 10 months, but they were, I think they saw the vision, like I yeah, yeah. So I finished the film, like the editing and the animation, first week of December last year. And I was meant to now study sound design, which was the final part of making the film. But because of his Christmas was coming, my friend was traveling, like it was not a good time for work. So we said we'll start in January. January came, everybody was still, it's the new year. First week of January passed, second week of January. Okay, second week of January, we had like maybe 2 or 3 meetings, right, to just get into doing the sound design. The next week, I got an email from BFI saying they had selected the film to screen in London, and the film wasn't finished because I had submitted it when it was still incomplete, hoping that by January I would finish it. So I remember, like, when I got the email, I was getting ready to go to his house. I had never like hurried up to someone's house before. Like, I went to Sute's house. From the door, I was just like, Sute. I was like, what's up? I was like, I have something to show you. And I opened my laptop, and both of us were just like, BFI is crazy. So yeah, we had to now obviously like hurry up with the sound design, and we finished it. I watched it for feedback, gave him some notes, watched the film again, and that was it. But to be honest, I would say like the first time I watched the film was at the premiere, like in London. I just sat at the back, and I was just like, and I was just looking at everyone's face, and I was looking at the screen, and I was just like, oh my god, this is real. Yeah, that was I would say that was the first time I really like just took everything in. And yeah. Thank you guys. Thank you for coming.
Round of applause for AJ again.